Hi, in this video, we will solve example sums for treatment of realization expenses or dissolution expenses. Let's go to the first example sum. Example sum 1. Pass the journal entries for the following transactions. So let's begin by preparing the journal. Journal date / serial number, particulars, LF number, debit rupees and credit rupees. The first question, it says realization expenses were rupees 10,000. There is no mention as to who has to bear the expense. So we will assume that the firm was to bear the expense. It does not specify who has paid the expense. So the party who has to bear the expense has paid the expense, which means the firm has paid the expense. So borne by firm, paid by firm. The journal entry is realization account debit to bank account. Amount 10,000 rupees. Being expenses borne and paid by firm. Second question, it says realization expenses of rupees 5,000 were paid by Tarun, a partner. The expenses are paid by the partner, but nothing is mentioned, so it was to be borne by the firm. So expenses borne by firm, paid by partner, journal entry, realization account debit to Tarun capital account. Amount 5,000 rupees. Narration, being expenses borne by firm, paid by Tarun. The third question, realization expenses of rupees 5,000 were paid by the firm on behalf of Madan, a partner. So Madan was supposed to bear the expense, but the expense has been paid by the firm. So we have Madan capital account debit to bank account. Amount 5,000 rupees. Narration, being expenses borne by Madan and paid by firm. The fourth question, Pavan, a partner, was paid remuneration including expenses of rupees 20,000 to carry out dissolution of the firm. Actual expenses were rupees 10,000. So for the remuneration given, we'll first pass the journal entry. realization account debit. 2. Pavan, capital account. 20,000 rupees. Being remuneration given by firm to Pavan. Now the question includes the clause that the remuneration includes expenses. So Pavan is to bear the expenses. There is no mention as to who has actually paid the expense. So we assume that the party who has to bear the expense has also paid the expense. So Pavan, who was supposed to bear the expense, has also paid the expense. There will be no journal entry for the rupees 10,000. Next, fifth question. Dissolution expenses were 8,000 rupees. Out of the said expenses, 3,000 were to be borne by the firm and balanced by Ravi, a partner. The entire 8,000 was paid by the firm. So 3,000 rupees expenses borne by the firm, paid by the firm. The journal entry, realization to bank account. 5,000 rupees borne by Ravi but paid by firm. So Ravi's capital account to bank account. So we can combine this in a journal entry. Realization account debit, Ravi capital account debit, to bank account. To the extent of 3,000, which is borne by the firm and paid by the firm, we will debit realization account. For 5,000 rupees borne by Ravi, paid by firm, we will debit Ravi's capital account. And 8,000 rupees has been paid by the firm, we will credit bank account in the books of the firm. So, being expenses borne by firm and Ravi and paid by firm. Let's go to the sixth point. Realization expenses of rupees 5,000 were to be borne and paid by Karin, a partner. So the expense is to be borne and it's also paid by Karan, a partner. There will be no journal entry for this question. Let's go to the seventh question. Manoj, a partner, is to carry out dissolution of the firm at an agreed remuneration of rupees 10,000. So the firm is allowing a remuneration to Manoj, a partner. The journal entry, realization account debit, to Manoj, capital account. Being remuneration allowed to Manoj. Amount of remuneration 10,000 rupees. The eighth question. Dev, a partner, is paid remuneration of rupees 15,000 for dissolution of the firm. Realization expenses of 8,000 are paid by the firm. So we'll pass the entry for remuneration given to Dev by the firm. Realization account debit to Dev's capital account. ₹15,000 being remuneration allowed to Dev. It does not say that the remuneration includes expenses. So the actual expenses of 8,000, which is paid by the firm was supposed to bear it in the absence of information. So expenses borne by the firm and paid by the firm, realization to bank account. The second part of the question, realization account debit to bank account. ₹8,000 being expense borne and paid by firm. The final question, ninth one. Realization expenses of rupees 5,000 were to be borne by Pavit, a partner. However, it was paid by Hitesh, another partner, and it was to be recorded in the books. So Hitesh pays the expense on behalf of Pavit. We need to penalize Pavit and give more to Hitesh. So we'll debit Pavit's capital account and credit Hitesh's capital account. Narration being expense paid by Hitesh on behalf of Pavit. Amount ₹5,000. We are done with the journal entries in this first example sum. I will remove the split. We can view the entire answer together. So these are the journal entries. Let's go to the example sum 2. Example sum 2. Pass necessary journal entries on the dissolution of partnership firm in the following cases. So let's begin with the solution. Journal date / serial number, particulars, LF number, debit rupees, and credit rupees. The first question. L, a partner, was appointed to look after the dissolution process, for which he was given a remuneration of rupees 10,000. So remuneration allowed to a partner, journal entry, realization account debit. To L, capital account. Amount 10,000 rupees. Narration being remuneration allowed by firm to partner L. Second question. Dissolution expenses of 8,000 rupees were met by partner M. So M has paid the expense. There is no information as to who was to bear the expense. So we assume that the firm was to bear the expense. So borne by firm, paid by partner, it's realization account debit. To M, capital account. Amount 8,000 rupees. Narration being expense borne by firm and paid by partner M. Third question. Dissolution expenses were rupees 5,000. No mention who was to bear it and who has paid it. So we assume that the expenses were to be borne by the firm and also paid by the firm. Journal entry, realization account debit to bank account. 5,000 rupees. Narration being expense borne and paid by firm. Fourth question. P, a partner, was appointed to look after the process of dissolution, for which he was allowed a remuneration of rupees 7,000. P agreed to bear the dissolution expenses. Actual expenses of rupees 4,000 were paid by partner P. The journal entry for the remuneration given, realization account debit to P, capital account. Amount of remuneration 7,000 rupees. Narration being remuneration allowed to partner P. It says P agreed to bear the dissolution expenses and he also paid the expenses of rupees 4,000. Dissolution expenses borne by partner, paid by partner, no journal entry for the rupees 4,000. The fifth question. N, a partner, was appointed to look after the process of dissolution, for which he was allowed a remuneration of rupees 9,000. N agreed to bear the dissolution expenses and actual dissolution expenses of rupees 4,000 were paid by the firm. So for the remuneration given, realization account debit to N, capital account. 9,000 rupees. Narration being remuneration allowed to partner N. The next part of the question, actual dissolution expenses of rupees 4,000 was to be borne by the partner N, but it was actually paid by the firm. So expenses borne by partner paid by firm is N capital account debit to bank account. Amount of expenses 4,000 rupees. Narration being expense borne by partner paid by firm. Final question 6. Q, a partner, was appointed to look after the process of dissolution of the firm, for which he was allowed a remuneration of rupees 18,000. Q agreed to take over stock worth rupees 18,000 as his remuneration. Stock had already been transferred to the realization account. So, for the rupees 18,000 remuneration given, the journal entry is realization account debit to Q capital account. Amount of remuneration given 18,000 rupees. Narration being remuneration allowed to partner Q. Next part of the question, Q agreed to take over stock worth rupees 18,000 as his remuneration. The journal entry for asset taken over by partner is Q's capital account debit to realization account. The stock taken over rupees 18,000. Narration being stock taken over by partner Q. Now if you see here, both the journal entries, they cancel each other. Each one, it's the reverse. The second entry is the reverse of the first entry. So we can even write no journal entry as the answer to this question, because both the journal entries cancel each other. So effectively, there will be no journal entry for the question number 6. So this is the answer. I'll remove the split. We can view all the journal entries together. Let's go to the third example sum. Example sum 3. Pass the journal entries for the following. So let's begin. Solution. Journal. Date / serial number. Particulars. LF number. Debit rupees and credit rupees. First question. Realization expenses were rupees 10,000. and paid by the firm on behalf of Alok, a partner with whom it was agreed at rupees 7,500. So 7,500 was the agreed amount between the firm and Alok. The journal entry for the same, realization account debit to Alok capital account, $7,500 being remuneration agreed between Alok and the firm. And the actual realization expenses of rupees 10,000 has been paid by the firm on behalf of Alok. So journal entry, Alok capital account debit to bank account, narration being expenses borne by Alok, paid by the firm. Amount 10,000 rupees. Second, realization expenses were rupees 5,000. It was agreed that the firm will pay rupees 2,000 and balance by Ravinder, a partner. So rupees 5,000 to be borne by the firm. Out of that, rupees 2,000 paid by the firm and balance 3,000 paid by Ravinder. So combined journal entry, realization account debit, total expense to be borne by the firm rupees 5,000, to bank account the amount which is actually paid by the firm rupees 2,000, and to Ravinder account expense which has been paid by Ravinder rupees 3,000 being expense borne by firm, 2,000 rupees paid by firm and balance by partner. Final entry, third question. Dissolution expenses of rupees 10,000 were paid by Amit, a partner, on behalf of the firm. So borne by firm, paid by Amit. Realization account debit to Amit capital account. Amount 10,000 rupees. Narration being expenses borne by firm and paid by Amit. I'll remove the split. We can view the journal entries. So these are the answers.